G'day IB psychologists. The hardest exam questions I think to answer are about research methods and ethical considerations. So in this video I want to explain a general structure that you can use to write really good research methods, short answer questions and essays. Alright, so remember in IB Psychology Paper 1 and Paper 2, you might be asked about research methods or ethical considerations in regards to each topic. Remember the bio, cog and socio-cultural approaches have 3 topics, not to be confused with the content or the additional terms, right? So for example, in the biological approach, the topics are the brain and behavior, hormones, pheromones and behavior, and genetics and behavior. So you might get asked, for example, a question on evaluate one research method used in the study of the brain in relation to behavior. All right, so these are the types of questions you might be asked. Now, how do you answer these questions? I recommend what, how, why. You can't go past this approach, right? And so let's just see what that looks like. Research methods. Now, I have my students next week taking a test on abnormal psychology, a paper 2 replica. So let's use that as an example. All of my students are studying the etiologies of abnormal psychology topic. I think this is the most straightforward to prepare. So they've got biological, cognitive, sociocultural etiologies for abnormal psychology, but they also have to be prepared to write about research methods used to understand etiologies and ethical considerations relevant to that study. So for research methods, I want to see them explain what is the research method used, how are they used, and why are they used. So for example, if you're writing about the use of correlational studies in etiologies of abnormal psychology, I would expect my students to define what is a correlational study, right? Here you're showing knowledge. How is it used and why? And specifically, how is it used in the study of abnormal psychology? Now this general explanation, the what, how, why, for a correlational study would be the same in the brain and behavior, hormones, culture and behavior, maybe even cognitive processes, but then you go one step further and link it specifically to the topic that you're writing about. So for example, correlational studies in the etiologies of abnormal psychology, they take 2 covariables. One of them is invariably going to be post-traumatic stress disorder as measured by some sort of questionnaire like the CAPS, the clinically administered PTSD scale. So that's one covariable, and then that will be correlated. Other data will be gathered to find another variable that might be correlated with the CAPS scores, right? So for example, appraisals or volume in the brain or activity in the brain, socioeconomic status. These are common factors that people hypothesize will be linked with PTSD. Now, that just little extra description about the 2 types of covariables often correlated in studies and etiologies of abnormal psychology is showing detailed understanding of the method. Right now, that will be slightly different if I'm talking about, say, the brain and behavior. So like because the nature of the covariables is going to be slightly different. Anyway, what is the method? How is it used and why is it used, and link it to the particular topic. Now, that's what I would call, right, the central argument. This is really important because it shows knowledge and understanding. Now, that's criterion B in the essay criteria. The second one, then now you have to have some studies, right? Most students make the mistake, I think, of skipping this first step here and going straight into the studies, right? One study that uses a correlational study is, right, but they actually haven't shown me that they understand the use of that method. So the studies, right, I would suggest writing about 2, okay, describe them in detail, and then use those studies to highlight and support the explanation you've given here, how and why they're used, right? So 2 studies there, and then now we get into the limitations, right? That's the but. You say, yeah, sure, here we've shown the strengths. Here we've shown the benefits of using these methods. They're useful. Here's the reasons. Here's the studies. This supports my argument, but these methods come with certain limitations, right? And then so for correlational studies, for example, I'd expect them to say, make the classic point, correlation doesn't mean causation, but then go further than that and actually evaluate the studies they've used here to highlight not just the limitations of these specific studies, but the limitations of the particular method, right? So now if we just bang a simple, we've got an introduction and a conclusion, I think that makes for an awesome essay, right? My brief introduction is going to state the method I'm going to write about, the studies I'll use, and I'm going to mention the fact that I'm going to evaluate this because that's what the question will be asking in an essay. And then what, how, why, studies, limitations, right? In that order, conclusion, done. Now, This is just a framework, a template. Feel free to break it up. For example, you might say, what is a correlational study and how is it used, and use one study. And then you might think, actually, it makes more sense to put the why here and then have a second study after the why and then get into the limitations. Or maybe you'll put limitations after each study. That's fine. Absolutely fine, right? This is not something you have to follow step by step, right? Rule by rule. This is just a general framework that I think works. But if in the course of writing your essay, you feel that actually it makes more sense to change this and go somewhere else, fantastic, go for it, all right? But I think this is a good place to begin, especially if this is your first time writing one of these methods answers. I don't think there's too much else to add there. That's how we write a research methods essay. Now I'll make other videos where I can actually go into the specific methods for the specific topics and the studies if you like, if you think that'd be helpful. Leave a comment. Otherwise, there we have it. It's that simple. Thank you and good luck. Cheers.